miles east of Hiroshima. After graduating from Okayama University, she studied at the University of Hawaii, an experience that taught her to see the world in a more inclusive way. She learned that we all depend upon each other to create a more peaceful world. And let me tell you, she is a mighty volunteer. And our very own docent here at the Oregon Nikkei Legacy Center. She is a mother. She is an advocate. She is a survivor. Please help me welcome to the stage Ms. Michiko Kornhauser.
Hello, Kurt. You are very kind. Thank you very much for your introduction. As I age, I need a written statement before I start talking. Today, I feel more than honored to be here to commemorate the 74th anniversary of, in a way, the destruction of two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. As we all know, that World War II started in Europe in 1939 and in the Pacific in 1941. The war lasted for 6 years until September 1945 and killed 75 million people, including both military and civilians. That is about 3% of the world population at the time. It was the deadliest military conflict in history, and Japanese casualties were about 3 million at the time. When I think about World War II, I think about not only Japanese, but also those who were killed by the Japanese military as well. Any war is so cruel and brutal that I don't comprehend why we continue to do so, and each time with deadlier weapons too. Today I'd like to talk about some of what I saw as a child during that period. When the war started, my family moved from Tokyo to Okayama, which was less than 100 miles east of Hiroshima. My father became the director of the Navy Distribution Center of the West. By 1944, however, American fighter planes began to fly over us to shoot anybody they could find. I survived one such incident. I was all by myself, walking in the midst of the rice field, when I suddenly heard a strange noise coming from my back. At school, I had learned how to jump sideways when I heard noise coming from behind. Our teacher asked us never to turn around to see what was happening, but simply jump sideways. So when I heard the noise coming from my behind, I instantly jumped sideways right into a deep ditch. When I did that, I saw bullets hitting the ground where I was walking just a moment ago. The fighter plane had scooped very low to shoot me and immediately went up into the sky. The noise of the plane was so deafening that I soon realized I had trouble hearing. I had been told that the plane would often come back to make sure that the bullets had hit the targets. But that day, the plane didn't come back to finish me off. But later on, I learned that quite a few people were shot to death by these fighter planes. One grandmother, for an example, was walking with her 2-year-old granddaughter. When she heard the plane coming, she wrapped her arms around her granddaughter to protect her, but instead, the bullets went through both bodies and they were instantly killed. I began to wonder what the war was for. After all, we are not soldiers. In the beginning of 1944, my father, who was a Navy officer, but not the combat man, was sent to Hollandia, New Guinea to take care of the distribution of the supply. His last postcard said that the situation was hopeless and he would be either killed by Americans or eaten by crocodiles. The jungle was occupied by headhunters at that time.
Weird.
This always happens.
Yeah.
One day in May, the government notified my mother that my father was missing in action and presumed dead on May the 3rd. Soon after the news arrived, one of his subordinate officers came and knelt in front of my father's office and shot his head. He was holding onto a piece of paper that said, "Without Captain Usui, there is no hope for Japan's future." My mother suffered much from such a tragedy. I still, from time to time, recall the way she cried. Tokyo had been hit quite a few times, but on March the 10th, 1945 alone, 279 B-29 bombers flew over Tokyo and dropped about 1,510 tons of firebombs and killed more than 100,000 civilians, and over 1 million people lost their homes. 3 months later, in June, in the early morning, 138 B-29s flew over the city of Okayama, where I was living, and dropped 15,000 firebombs, which destroyed 75% of Okayama City. I lost 25% of my classmates that night. My friend and I promised that we would play again the next day, but the next day never came to us. She was killed that night. This experience taught me to live one day at a time. Also, never to wait until the next day to do anything. Soon after that, the school teachers took the remaining students to a countryside away from the city, and we began to live in a large temple. But the food was scarce, and the teachers immediately taught us to grow vegetables. A big river was flowing nearby, and we did all the washings in there, including brushing our teeth. Other schools were doing the same thing. And when someone became sick in upper stream of the river, we all got sick. It was dysentery. One day in August, we the children were playing outside of the temple. The sky was blue and clear just like this. Suddenly we noticed that something was flying over us, and before we knew it, we were seeing something falling all over us. Soon we are covered with grayish ash. The teachers shouted, "Go and run to the river and wash yourselves." So we ran to the river, only to find the river was also covered with the ash. That night, teacher told us that a huge bomb fell over Hiroshima and the entire city was wiped out. We then knew where the ash came from. Then soon after that, we were told that another bomb fell over Nagasaki. The 2 atomic bombs dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki killed over 200,000 people. On August the 15th, we listened to the emperor speak that the war had ended. What a relief it was that we didn't have to worry about fighter planes attacking us anymore. Soon after that, we all went home, but the city was a shambles. I felt so fortunate to see my house still standing. But the food was scarce, and my mother sent us all to the fields to find something to eat. We brought home all kinds of plants so that my mother could look them up to see if they were edible. My baby brother was not that lucky and not getting enough food. And one morning, my mother woke me up to tell me that he was dead. Only a day before, my brother looked happy to suck the juice from the grapes that I had gathered in the field, but that was not enough for him to sustain his life. As I stared at his motionless, bloodless, and white face, I promised him that I would live life for him too. At that time, my mother had a teenage boy living with us. His parents were killed during the bombing. He had an older brother, however, working in Hiroshima, so he went to Hiroshima to look for him. He walked all over the city, and finally, towards the end of the day, he found his brother dead in the ditch. The brother's body was so swollen that he almost didn't recognize his brother. He had then his brother cremated and buried and came back to live with us. As September arrived, the schools started. Then one day, when I got up, I noticed fallen hair scattered over the pillow of this boy. I told my mother about that. That day, when I came home from school, my mother told me that the boy was hospitalized and probably wouldn't come back to live with us again. Sometime later, he died of radiation sickness. He never saw the atomic bomb explode. He only walked around the city looking for his brother. Now, this entire family was gone. I began to wonder about the ash that fell all over us on the temple ground. It must have been radioactive. In 1961, I came to the East-West Center at the University of Hawaii to study. The following year, in July 1962, America exploded another bomb over Johnson Islands. I saw the most hideous-looking mushroom clouds spreading over Waikiki Beach in the middle of the night, and was drenched with radioactive rain the next day. I often wonder why I am still living in this world. Do we want our children to experience something like this that I had gone through? I don't think so. Then we have to work together towards something better for the sake of our children. Look at Fukushima nuclear power station in Japan, which was a peaceful use of nuclear power, but the facility was destroyed by the earthquake and followed by tsunami. There is a tremendous concern now over cancer in people caused by the accident. Recently, they decided to abandon the use of the facility. If the peaceful use of nuclear power is this dangerous, what effect will it have as a weapon? I strongly hope that leaders of the world will realize how precious this earth is, and we shouldn't be dropping or shooting up bombs here and there. Please, instead, think about the safety of all the creatures on this earth. Without peace, there is nothing here for us to live on. This earth is too small not to think about that seriously. We also have to make sure that we learn the history of the world so as not to make the same mistakes. I don't want anybody to go through what I had gone through, and so, as a child, it was not pretty. I wish nothing but peace for us all. Thank you very much for listening to me today. Thank you. Now we'd like to have Ikoi-no-kai house band. We get together regularly, usually Friday after lunch at Ikoi-no-kai, to sing and practice music, making us feel good. If you like to join us, please join us. Ikoi-no-kai is located at the corner of Southeast Madison and then 28th. Today, we'd like to introduce 5 songs. Probably many of you already know it. If you know it, sing with us. If you don't, hum with the music with us. First one is Kojo no Tsuki, like, moon over the ruined castle. And next one is Hanyu no Yado, that's homeland. I have written it here at the end. My Sweet Home, number 2. The 3, Oh Danny Boy. 4, Furusato, homeland. 5, Where We Down Go. Let's look up at the sky when we walk and be cheerful about it.